Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to The Naturalist Capitalist. I am your host, Reed Coverdale, and I've got Sam, the LiBROtarian. He is now the LiBROtarian. He's not maybe the LiBROtarian or totally not the LiBROtarian. He has fully come out of the closet as the LiBROtarian. So welcome back, Sam.
Nice to be back. It's good to embrace the title once again instead of hiding behind a shroud.
Yeah, I mean, they seem busy destroying other accounts right now, so I guess you don't have to worry about it too much. You're like secondary now.
Don't care about the guy spamming anymore, so I think I'm good.
Yeah. Man, so since you were back on, since you were last on, a lot of weird shit has taken place. The biggest, the thing that everyone's still talking about was the Capitol building on January 6th with everyone storming in. But we just watched this clip, and I'm just going to play it here so everyone can see it, and then we'll talk about it.
Hey! Fucking hey, man. Glad to see you guys. You guys are fucking patriots. Look at this guy. He's got covered in blood. God bless you. Yes. You good, sir? Do you need medical attention?
I'm good, thank you.
All right.
I got shot in the face. I got shot in the face with some kind of plastic bullet.
Any chance I could get you guys to leave the Senate wing?
We will. I've been making sure they ain't disrespecting the place.
Okay, just want to let you guys know this is like the sacredest place.
I know.
All right, so that was that's interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Sam?
It kind of just really exemplifies the cluster that it was, and it just really, it's humorous. As tragic as some of the things that happened on that was, it really just shows like I don't know, some of the ignorance and just the silliness of what it all was in general, you know?
Yeah. To me, it looks like it's like when you have people who don't speak the same language as the guy who's conducting a guided tour, so they don't really know what the rules are, and he's like, "Oh no, please, sir, don't touch that, don't you know?" That's kind of what it reminded me of. He was like, he was almost being careful to be polite, you know, like, "Okay, please, guys, just like respect this place. It's super secret." It's just like it's kind of indistinguishable from parody.
Yeah, definitely parody, and it just like if you want to say it's like it shows like the ineffectiveness of government sometimes, like to even just stop somebody from walking into the Senate, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I as you know, I've said I feel like this was enabled, but if I'm completely wrong, like if this was accidentally allowed to happen, like they tried to stop it, then that's a wake-up call to like, wow, our government cannot do anything. Like we've got an $800 billion defense bill, but this guy in a buffalo hat and a few idiots walked into the Senate wing and there's nothing they could do to stop them.
Definitely evidence of it being some sort of like planned coordinated thing, and that's just seeing that clip where the guy is almost like, "No, please don't stop," you know, like that kind of half effort of like, I told him not to.
Yeah, when he's talking to his superiors later, like, "I told them not to touch it. I'm sorry. Like, I tried." Oh my God.
Well, it's crazy, man.
But yeah. Anyways, how's your new year going personally so far? Things going well in Oklahoma, or?
Yeah, they're going well. In terms of personal growth, I've been not to get too specific, but I've been working on, just getting better at things that I've kind of shown partial interest in, and also getting back into the good old New Year's resolution of working out and eating better, all that stuff. And I'm feeling pretty good so far, 17 days in, so all's well.
Yeah, sweet. So your podcast is kind of taken off. You've had a lot of new guests on the show, because it kind of just been you and me and Liberty Empathy, but now you've kind of expanded. You're getting a lot more people on. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to be more intentional with it. I know it first started off as being like, hey, I'm just kind of have fun and do whatever I want, and it is still fun, and I'm still doing what I want. But if I'm gonna use it as an effective tool, especially now that we have like a direction, like the Liberty Unity direction going, it needs to be more intentional. So I've been reaching out for to get different viewpoints from different people, like with Jeremy, I saw that he, had experience in sales and had an idea about how to sell Liberty, and using sales tactics. Even he mentioned something like that, and I was like, dude, come on my show and talk about that. And then my last guest, Quattro, he actually contacted me and said, hey, here's some things that I think are important, in terms of technology and the things that people can do to protect themselves and even realize that we have power. And I was like, you are the one you come on and talk about this, And so he jumped right on that, and I have a couple other episodes planned out with a little bit more intention to bring on people that are in the Liberty Unity movement to kind of help bring those ideas that we talk about, between each other and even put out there in different ways, by having a broader discussion rather than like our Zoom calls or our group chats or even just the tweets that go.
Yeah. This Liberty Unity thing, now that we've actually seen it play out for 2 weeks, it's been kind of interesting to watch because a lot of the people who I initially was skeptical of are actually appearing less agitative than some of the people that I thought were more inclusive. It's becoming obvious who the gatekeepers are, and it just the blatant double standards too. I'm not going to name any names, but reading through some of the comments of people who don't want Thomas Massey to become a libertarian, I'm just like, what planet are you on? Like, like I want Tulsi Gabbard to be a libertarian. That's way bigger of a stretch than Thomas Massey. Like, he is the closest person who we could grab. And there are people who really don't want him in because they think he's alt-right. They think he's racist. They think he's like I don't know, a fascist or whatever. It's just insane. And it's funny. Like 2 weeks ago, there was this account called the Liberty Exposer, and he tagged me and several other people as people who were fake libertarians. But this Liberty Unity thing has actually become the new Liberty Exposer because it shows like, who are you willing to work with? Because I'm willing to work with like Vermin Supreme, Dave Smith, the right and the left in the Liberty movement. I want them to all come together, and it's very obvious who is against that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is really easy to see who those resistors are, and like you said, the gatekeepers, and that's the kind of stuff we really want to get away from. And I think it's really telling to see that there are some people who previously maybe were like that, who had a little bit of that gatekeeper, exclusivity, you have to have the right principles mentality, starting to join up and realize that, hey, we need to have some realization about what the liberty movement really should be, instead of having this super narrow point of view and litmus testing people across the board and saying, nope, you're out of here, versus really understanding that it has to have a lot more unity and be a lot more, we're not going to just let any single person, like, obviously there is some considerations to be had about who who's really going to be pushing for the right liberty, or liberty in the right sort of way, is I guess what I should say. But it's funny to see, like you said, the people who are like, okay, let's drop all that hard ass, like, no, you're not going to be in my libertarian party, and who's on board, and those who are, kind of taking that spot and kind of taking that stalwart approach of, nope, not going to do this, or even just like continuing the silly little bickering that has got us into a place where somebody's like, yeah, Libertarian Party, not going to be part of that, infighting.
Yeah. I think what we've been most effective at, and for those who don't know, like we've got group chats going on where we kind of like cite in on areas where there's dumb arguments going on, and we'll just kind of go and like smother them with just like, hey, why, with kindness, or like, why are we arguing about this? And we kind of defuse it. That's been the most effective thing, is the people who are keeping the arguments going, they're kind of just being exposed as kind of irrelevant and just kind of, agitators that we don't really care about anymore. Instead of like engaging in dumb conversations, we'll just kind of talk past them and be like, all right, like if you want to be part of this, we want you. But, if you're going to continue down this road of isolationism, we're not going to join you, like you're welcome to come along with us whenever you want. But I think that's become the strategy, is kind of delegitimizing the stupidity of the dumb arguments that are happening.
Yeah, and I think that's something like you talked about. We go in and kind of smother out the infighting, and sometimes we smother it out with, why are we doing this? We're trying to be on the same team. And even sometimes you come in with like, I've seen quite a few of names are escaping me right now. It's Sunday night. I've had a busy day, but names are escaping me. But some of us go in there and like ask like real questions, like the probing questions, not antagonistic questions. It was like, okay, kind of like what Jeremy said, like validate their point to an extent and let them like expound on it. A lot of times they don't expound on it because it's kind of personal baseless,
Right.
and exposes them even more. And we go in and sometimes there's some bickering and back and forth, and sometimes that's appropriate, I think. But it's funny to see them, get real engagement and say, okay, well, what is your real issue? Why don't you want to unite with this person? Or what is your real qualms with them? And it's almost like they're just like, no, this is my grudge. I'm going to keep my grudge. I'm not going to give it any sort of logical thought or analysis. It's mine, and I'm going to be mad at this person forever, kind of thing. So,
Yeah, I mean, on our last video that we did, we were talking about religion, and I come from a similar background to yours, and a lot of what's going on now reminds me of things that would happen in the church when people would just get upset over stupid little minutia and kind of miss the big picture, and they'd be holding grudges against each other, when it was like, hey, isn't our goal here to spread this message and spread this love? And we're here bickering about a verse out of, that we don't understand the context of from thousands of years ago, and it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. And I think some of those people have real hurt. Like it's obvious that there's real hurt there, and there's been real betrayal, and there's a lot of history to sort through with all that. And that's not to say none of it's legitimate, and that's not to say it should just be like forgive and forget. Obviously that's ideal, but a lot of times it's not a switch. It's a process, and I think that's something you can see the people who are willing to take steps towards that process. And some people it may still be a little too fresh for them. I can understand that too. And then it seems like there's some people who just don't want to. And those people who just don't want it, it's like, okay, fine, it's obvious, it's obvious you don't want to, and you're showing your true colors. So
yeah. And the other thing is, unity is important, but sometimes the messaging of something is so bad, or somebody is so wrong about something, you do have to call them out and be like, dude, like this is not what we should be saying. I really did that with, when Trump got banned from Twitter and everyone was getting shut down. I was like, hey, I mean, this goes against, regardless of what the approach is, whether you think the government should be involved or not, I wasn't even getting into that. I was just saying what is happening is not good, and it's anti-libertarian. Libertarian is about the free exchange, like with goods, but also with ideas. So if somebody has a bad idea, you combat it with logic and with facts. You don't censor them. I mean, censoring them is the same as like having the government shut a business down because you don't like what it's doing. It's the free marketplace. Like you provide a better product, people will buy it. Same idea with if you provide a better thought process, or if you provide something that makes more sense, people are going to listen to you. It's kind of all wrapped up in the same thing. So a lot of people get upset like, oh, whoa, you want unity, but you're getting upset about this. And it's like, well, yeah, I still want to work with you, but I'm not going to just sit back and watch you eat yourself. Like I'm going to give my opinion on what the direction we should be going in is.
Yeah, and I think that's something I feel like that we've all done pretty well of. I've kind of accepted this as my role a little bit, and obviously I engage in some ways, but a lot of mine a little bit of the trolling stuff, a little bit more of the troll and share and
yes,
kind of through that means. So I'm not really in there as much as like you and Jeremy and all the other people, but I definitely see that. And I definitely see that hey, we're unified, but I'm still going to call you out. And that's what you do with somebody you are allied with. Because if you see something that you think is, whether they're right or wrong, if the messaging is off, or whether they're, whatever is going on, if they're your ally, then you're going to be like, hey, man, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, or, there's better ways to go about it. And I think that, leads into, the bad messaging, the outrage sometimes that can happen, or even just there's a little bit of pompousness whenever it comes to talking about libertarian principles and the exclusivity mindset that sometimes happens with, well, we have the best principles, libertarianism is, effective and all this stuff. And it's fine to be prideful about the things you believe in, but we want to get away from that reputation of seeing the libertarian as the person who you can't approach. A lot of times I think that's something that has been built from all of this, is that, oh, you're a libertarian. Okay, well, I guess I don't want to talk politics with you.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it pushed and it alienates you further away with some of the images, or even the like you said, the messaging that has come across, even, and is just kind of made that a reputation a little tough sometimes.
Yeah, and I thought you had a great episode with Liberty Empathy a month or 2 months ago now, I think it was, where you guys talked about how you want to change the perception of what it means to be a libertarian, not even in a political sense, just in a day-to-day social sense, like the way we think about the church right now. Like the church is something that helps the poor, something that will accept the needy. Like we want libertarianism to have that image, and it certainly does not right now. So we're trying to do everything we can on a personal level, but also on a projection level, that if we don't believe in government coercion, then we have to believe in personal responsibility. And personal responsibility doesn't mean just taking care of yourself. It means taking care of everybody. And in almost every live stream I do, I end it with take care of each other, take care of yourselves. And I'm really trying to make that mainstream. Like when people hear individualism right now, I think they think greedy or out for yourself, when that's not what individualism is. Individualism is just taking responsibility for yourself. And we need to really convey that also means taking care of your neighbor and your family and the guy on the side of the road who needs his tire changed, or any of those things.
Yeah, it's being responsible with what you're capable of doing. It's not just taking care of yourself. Like you said, it's if you're capable, then you're responsible for acting on that capability, acting on those means that you have. And I know that you mentioned, I can't remember if it was on a podcast or maybe just me and you talking one time, where you talked about I think it was a guy was on the side of the road, you pulled over and you helped him look at his car, and he needed a new
alternator.
And you got it. You went out and got it and helped him put it in, and that's within your skill set. That's within your wheelhouse, both financially and like your actual and skills. For me, that's not something I would be able to do as freely, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't take action where I can.
Right.
in the same situation, I still could have pulled over. I still could have said, "Hey, can I drive you to the store? Can I get you to a mechanic or something?" While I may not have the same means or skill as you, like you said, the individualism is being aware of what you can contribute and doing it. And I think that's something that we can, like you said, do socially and do in just charitable work. Because if we believe in libertarianism in terms of how it can really allow people to not be under the thumb of the government to do what is right by their standards, then we have to start acting on that now. And how we can start showing it now. We don't want to wait till the government's out of the way to say, well, here's what we can do. It's like we need to show it now. Then people will see, and then people understand that, hey, we can survive as a people if we take care of ourselves and each other.
Yeah, I mean, the reason the government sucks is because it has a one-size-fits-all approach where, like you said, individualism would have, you might be able to help someone in a situation way better than I could, and then I could help someone else in a better situation than you could. And that's good. Like, that's what we want. We want people to operate where they're comfortable and where they're able. The other thing is, I think that goes with messaging too. Like, for some reason, a lot of people think liberty unity means we all need the same messaging. And I've said, like, no. I mean, Vermin Supreme, he's not going to appeal to the conservative Republican. He's just not. And that's fine. Like, the people he appeals to is who he's going to appeal to. Dave Smith is not going to appeal to a lot of people, but that's fine because he does resonate with a lot of people. I have my own messaging, you have your own messaging, and that's great. What matters is that we're all working toward the same goal and that we're all going to ultimately get along, but we don't want a monolith of libertarians. I mean, the whole point of libertarianism is individualism and difference of opinion. That's great, and we should not be trying to clone each other at all, I think.
Yeah, I think that also goes with, you're picking up slack where somebody picks up slack because they can do what you can't. And I think that's the thing about it. And even to go further to say, it has to be individual. It has to be that free will. It can't be that one size fit all, because then it's not. You can't hold everybody to the same standard in those sort of ways, or force them. You can't force them to those same standards because it's not functional. And that's where me and you both agree that drastically reduce what the Fed is even doing on any level and give it back to the states, give it back to the local governments, give it back to the cities and the counties, and that's where you can, whenever you're doing these things, you can enact those changes. And that's where you can really have better effectiveness whenever you get this big blanket out of the way, because, a handful of people think it's a good idea to do X, even though X makes it a lot harder for these entire population of people here. And it just comes down to simply like what works, like even on me and you, like on our level, like what I was just saying about, you have the means and the skills to change somebody's alternator. If you were requiring me to do that, things would go bad.
Right.
I don't know where the alternator is, Reed.
Yeah, no, it's totally right. And the other thing is, like I feel like some people who are in the liberty movement, they don't live out their principles. They kind of have libertarianism as an abstract idea that they don't really want to ever become concrete, because then you would have to prove that it works. If you can have something that's never going to win, that's never going to go anywhere, and you can just point to, like, see, everything would be fine if we had this, but you're not living it out, then you're a hypocrite, and I mean, like you and I, we try to live like libertarians. We try to live through voluntary action and taking care of each other. And if this were to start taking off, we would already know what we're doing. You know, we're already living in that way. I feel like a lot of these libertarians who just have the Gadsden flag and say taxation is theft and stock up on ammo, they don't really want to take care of their neighbor. You know, they don't really want to live this lifestyle that would be necessary without the government. A lot of them.
Yeah, and I think that is, and some of that could be, you know, their skewed vision of libertarianism, and some of that could be like legitimate fear, because what if it doesn't work? What if this whole thing that we've been saying, it's the way this, you know, like this is how things should function, and this is how life should be, and then it happens and it doesn't, then egg on your face, you know. And it's a whole lot more than that, because you know that you've become identified with that. And I think a lot of people like bring that libertarian identity into themselves and hold it as a core trait of who they are, and that's fine. But a lot of times you can sometimes get so protective of that it can't prosper. You know, it's you need to let that piece of identity, that piece of who you are, push your actions beyond, you know, talk. And a lot of us, and I was talking about this with Quattro. I don't think it got onto the show, but one of the things that he actually brought it up whenever I mentioned it, sometimes you think that a lot of times, you know, libertarians may sometimes that they're the smarter people. And he said there's a Pew poll that was done that kind of indicates a lot of times that the average intelligence of libertarians may be a little high, and I think sometimes we know that a little too much. And like, not to our own horns, well, we're the smartest party. Like, it's, I don't remember what even the amount was, but just the fact that we kind of can be aware of how intelligent we can be sometimes, then we kind of get that extended exclusivity of, like, you know, it gets hard. Like we were talking about on the Zoom call, we're political junkies, a lot of us, you know, that are in this liberty movement, and libertarians as a whole. You know, if you're really super involved, you're probably pretty politically aware, way more so than the average person. And I think that's where our message gets hung up so much, is because we can talk about all these things that we see that we pay attention to, that everybody can see if they want it. You know, like you can go in and see all the things that are being voted on, and the legislation being passed, and look past what they say in the press conferences, like politicians, you know, what they say in press conferences, and be more aware of the double-sidedness and the backhandedness and everything that's going on. And it's kind of hard to take that knowledge and message it to the average person who watches CNN maybe twice a week and thinks everything's hunky-dory and the Democrats bad and Republicans good. You know, like that's where our messaging falls short, is because you could almost say, and I don't have any evidence to support this, but you could almost say our party is by and large more politically aware. And when you're trying to tell somebody things that they have no real true familiarity with, that's where the messaging falls short a lot of times.
Yeah, I think I'm guilty of that to a fault, because on my show, you know, I talk a lot about like quantitative easing and interest rates and, you know, stuff that, you know, the average guy will just be like, okay, sure. But what I really noticed was with that giant stimulus bill that passed on Christmas week, that hit home with a lot of people, because people didn't have money. And then I was covering it as it was happening, and I was showing them who was voting for it, who actually voted against it. And it really struck a chord. And a lot of my friends on Facebook and a lot of people who follow me on Twitter, people who follow me on YouTube, they were just furious. And I realized that that was something that I had brought home to them, and I was talking to them about it in their terms. And then that's a good bridge to say, okay, you know, you saw this, now let's talk about what happened 9 months ago with the CARES Act and what's been going on with the monetary policy all year long, you know, and then you have their attention, because you've already shown them how it actually screws them over. Because we can talk about theory, and we can talk about Rothbard, and we can talk about, you know, Mises, and, you know, all these people. and all their ideas, but unless you bring them home and you put them on your audience's turf, then they're not going to care. It's once you can show them how it affects them that they want to know more,
And I think that's and I don't know if I can say this like with 100% confidence, but I feel like at least in a fair sense, I'm probably the politically literate out of kind of the Liberty Unity group chats that we have. At least I feel lost a lot of times, especially when some people go on things. But I love hearing about it, even though, like, I went to you when we first started kind of talking in Twitter way back. I was like, hey, you know about economics. Where should I go to listen about economics? Like just seeing, just your interactions on Twitter. I remember going to you about that kind of stuff. And as time has gone on, I've obviously become more and more aware of all these things, but I'm still coming from like a year, like being politically involved, I guess. I've not paid too much attention on it. But coming from that perspective, I can still see that there is a need to educate. Like you can't just educate them; you have to meet them where they go. And I think that's something that we're continuing to work towards. And as the Unity movement as a whole, as we build platforms to reach people in different ways, I think that's what I want to do with my podcast. I want to bring people on who know things about like IT, like Quattro did, and I didn't know a lot of the things that he knows. People like Jeremy coming talking about sales and stuff, and the perspective that we can have with that. I think that's something that we can work on. That we are working on is having a platform and platforms to have those broader conversations where people feel like it's more accessible and can be more involved. So.
Yeah, totally. And I think people need to realize that no one's going to be 100% libertarian right off the bat. I sure wasn't. I mean, I was a Mike Huckabee Republican in middle school. If I could see myself now, I'd be horrified back then. And then Gary Johnson was my introduction to libertarianism, at least outside. I'd say Rand Paul was my introduction to the ideas, but Gary Johnson was the first guy I voted for outside of the duopoly. And at that time, I owned guns, but I didn't care about like an assault weapons ban or red flag laws. I didn't really care about the economics the way I do now. I didn't know anything about the Federal Reserve. Those are all things that I found out about later. I'd go back and watch, in like 2017, 2018, I'd go back and watch videos of Ron Paul from his 2012 election, and watch things from Rand Paul's election that I'd missed, and, watch stuff just about libertarianism. And it slowly brought me more and more into the center of that ideology. And a lot of people need to understand that, because everyone who knows me, they know I'm a pretty hardcore libertarian. But if I told them that I voted for 2 Democrats in 2016, for Senate, and then I voted for Mitt Romney in 2012, and I voted straight Republican in 2014, they'd be like, oh, keep him away, like he's he's unpure or whatever. And that's got to die big time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that we're moving towards. I can definitely feel that, and we've talked about it even before this, because I feel like we've been me and you have been talking about these sort of things, and it's kind of built to what the Liberty Unity thing has become, because we've talked about it when I've been on your show and you on mine, about we feel like there's this newer generation, this younger generation of libertarians that are coming in and saying, like, this is the best, like libertarianism is the real thing, but the LP is kind of crappy. And so I think that we've been talking about that, and I think that's something that you're starting to see now, why a lot of this is starting to catch as we're pushing it and getting more and more people on board. And I think as the other parties start to continue their collapse, we're only going to see that happen further and further,
Yeah. Well, yeah. The last thing I want to talk about is I do think that we are in exponential times. I do think the GOP could be put to death. I think it's on the verge of dying. It's not dead. A lot of people are saying it's dead. That's not true. It could definitely have a resurgence. But if we play our cards right, and if they play their cards wrong, which they are so far, it could definitely die. And I look at that as an absolute win. And, there are people on the left who are still with the Democratic Party. If they see the split over here happen, it's going to encourage them to say, you know what, I've had enough of this. This is a joke. Those guys finally, threw it off and did their own thing. So why don't we do it too? Because there's a lot of, with the Bernie Sanders race, being rigged against him, and the blatant hatred for the left that exists in the Democratic establishment. There's no loyalty there. It's just because they feel they have nowhere else to go. So if we show them that there is a place for them to go, and that even though we don't agree with them on everything, we do agree with them on a lot, and we're going to stand with them more than the establishments of either party do. Like I made a couple videos the other day, one to Republicans, and I was like, what if the Republican lawmakers protected that you care about? Guns, abortion, the border, like whatever you care about, like what have they actually done? So, we disagree with you on the border. We disagree with you on, some police things, but the things we actually agree with you on, we will stand firm on. And the same to the progressives. Like, we disagree with you on college and healthcare, but, when it comes to your civil liberties, or it comes to ending the wars, or it comes to freeing nonviolent criminals, like we are going to stand for that strong. And what is Joe Biden standing with you on? Like he's not giving you any of the things we disagree with you on, and he's not giving you any of the things we do agree with you on. So, like we're here. So
I think the Republican Party really is starting to eat itself alive. And I think there is a large swath of people who are realizing they have that distaste from Joe Biden. Like they went with Joe Biden because he's not Trump. It like fine, this is who they're giving us. Let's get Trump out of there, kind of thing. Like bite the bullet. Like I don't like Biden. And I think a lot of people probably have already kind of started eyeing other opportunities away from the DNC. And obviously they aren't imploding as much, but there's still a very much it's becoming more and more obvious day by day. Like they're always kind of pointed as the party of the people. Listen to the left and then just turn around and not do any of it. And I think finally people are finally being like, okay, so this is just how you're going to be for the rest of forever. Especially with like you said, with Bernie being burned twice.
Right.
So he was obviously the favorite in a lot of ways. I don't like him, but he was the favorite for them in a lot of ways, and people, basically the DNC was like, nah, no, not Bernie. And I think after Clinton, they were like, okay, fine, not Bernie, sure. And then whenever they picked Biden, I'm sure some of them were like, okay, we're just not going to get a voice if we're part of the DNC. And I think that's something that can be done well. And I think the thing I do worry about is if the GOP collapses and just floods the LP, want to end up actually becoming what everybody always says is the LP is just Republican light.
Yeah.
And I could see that being an image problem. I could see that even like keeping some of the DNC disenfranchised out. But I think that's why it's all the more important, like what you're saying, maybe you're alluding to this, is that it's all the more important to build our base and our foundation now. So when those things happen, we aren't like compromising anything and still being something that somebody else is joining, not something being overrun by the overflow of something that used to be.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to reach out to the right and the left to keep our message consistent, because if we got zero progressives and we only got conservatives, you'd probably expect to see the platform slowly become more conservative. Like, no, we want we want the hippies. Like, I mean, libertarianism is totally hip, you know, like it is leave me alone, smoke whatever you want, you know, like we want the people that Vermin Supreme attracts. We want them in the party. We also want the people that Ron Paul attracts because we do care about, you know, fiscal conservatism. So it's important to be like, look, everyone is welcome, but, you know, this is what we're going to stand for. Don't expect to come here and get Medicare for all. Don't expect to come here and get a border wall. You know, I mean, we can't lie to them. We got to be like, look, this is where we agree. And if you're good with working out with us on those things, that's great. But don't expect us to turn into the Republican Party or turn into the Democrat Party, because that's why you're leaving. You're leaving because you don't like it. So don't try to come here and change it. It's like, you know, all these liberals leaving California and then trying to turn Texas into California. It's like, wait a second, hold on. You left because it was such a shit show, and now you're trying to turn it into the same thing.
I think that comes back around to messaging, and that's where it's really important to like really be effective with what our message is, what we stand for, so that way they know what they're getting into, and our appeal, like it appeals to them. You know, we don't want to pander to them, but we want to appeal because there's a lot that we have in common with both of those sides.
Yeah, totally. Well, everyone, you should go check out the LiBROtarian's podcast. I'll put a link to it in the description. He's had me on a couple times, like we've talked about. He's had a bunch of people on. Maybe you can end up on it if you want. So go check him out. Sam, I just want to thank you for coming back on, and we'll have you on again for sure.
Right on.